It's just like playing a Jenga game where you've gotten the stack up so high that that one piece just makes the whole thing crumble down. And then all of a sudden you have to start all over again.
I am DJ Butler. Welcome to the Go Forward Lounge here with the entire ARC editorial team. Tony Daniel, Tony Daniel, editor-in-chief. David Afsharirod, my fellow senior editor. Come on in out of the rain. We are very excited to have back with us again Mike Gee. We had a prior conversation with him about producing, about Hollywood, and related subjects. We're gonna get more into that in a minute.
What would be your expertise, by the way? Did you produce any films we might have heard of? Or?
A lot of them I've worked on. A lot of the films the current films that we're working on are still coming out.
Yeah.
Christmas Pageant, I was an executive.
What's the name of that Christmas?
The best Christmas Pageant
Yes,
ever.
The one that just came out and ruled the box office.
Ruled the box office.
Yes.
But my place in that, again, was a pre-production executive, and my role was this is a 20-year process, pretty much.
But it's your partner that was the man.
Oh yeah, it's my partner. It's our production
baby.
company. Yeah.
Okay.
So you want to be honest, when you're talking about what you've worked on, and I've worked on a lot of projects, but the reality is as an independent producer, it takes longer to get a lot of projects done, but we're getting them done. So
that is awesome. Tony is just shaming me for not pumping you enough, which is he is right to do so. Yeah, we're excited.
We got him in here. It's just so cool.
It is really cool. We're excited to have you again. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notifications bell. And before we get back into the conversation, we're going to try a little game. This is a game about. Can I call this Mad Libs, or is that copyrighted?
You just got us demonetized.
Okay, we're playing a game called Word Swap. Hey, this is not Mad Libs. Here's how this is going to go.
Why don't we call it ARC something?
ARC something. The ARC Word Swap.
ARC
word
libs
swap.
might give people the wrong impression.
I don't think the word libs applies to us very well.
That's funny. So I'm going to have you guys give me words. I'll tell you a category. You give me words. Parts of speech. Parts of speech. I won't go down to like preposition. That would get very hard to parse.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave.
And then I'm going to read you
really know how to define a preposition.
I've always struggled with some of the grammar, TBH.
Let's not say that publicly.
I'm so good at grammar. I'm great at grammar. So
when Microsoft Word underlines something in the red, I know it's wrong.
keep playing with it until it stops underlining.
Just take the first one.
The underline.
That's right. Then I'll read the log line to you with the word swapped, and we'll see if you can guess the film.
The real
Right.
But first, for those playing at home, what do we win? No. For those playing at home, what is it? Maybe you can tell us, what is a log line if people don't know that term?
That is usually a one-sentence statement that describes what your film is, and you want it to be punchy and you want it to be succinct at the same time.
Okay.
Like a little haiku.
Fantastic.
Yeah, if you could do a haiku, that's pretty impressive for a log line.
That is pretty good. Okay.
Iambic pentameter.
Okay, let's start with a family member and a name of a relationship.
Uncle.
Fantastic. An activity.
Lizard hunting.
Perfect. Lizard hunting. An adjective.
Hastily.
That's an adverb. You weren't very good. Hasty.
You see, I knew I didn't.
The editor's coming out already.
We're gonna
Red marking already.
We're gonna all get demoted after this.
Okay, let's get another family term, relationship term.
Third cousin.
Okay, third cousin. Perfect. Here is the log line. The aging uncle of an organized lizard hunting dynasty transfers control of his hasty empire to his reluctant third cousin?
Ooh.
I think I know it, but I'm not going to
Do it. Yes.
The aging uncle.
I got nothing.
It's like Godfather.
It
I
is
was-
the
I was thinking
Godfather.
Godfather,
It is the
too,
Godfather.
yeah.
Yeah. So the real log line is the aging patriarch of an organized crime family transfers control of his clandestine empire to his reluctant son.
Nice.
All right, very good. Let's get a few more
Somewhat
of these.
hastily.
So somewhat hastily. Well, it was a
Before
hasty
his time
empire.
runs out.
I can use that in a sentence at least.
100%.
Words are hard.
Just stick to nouns and verbs.
Okay, here we go. This is a good one. All right, let's get a phase of life.
Prenatal.
I like it.
Okay, awesome. A city.
Sheboygan.
Constantinople.
or Constantinople. Let's do that.
Okay. Give me a type of entertainment.
Hula hooping.
There you go.
Perfect. A suspicious activity.
Peeping through windows.
I was going to say writing. But
Very suspicious.
That's basically the same.
It is
the
it is
same.
voyeuristic. Yeah.
Proverbially, right? Or metaphorically.
yeah, exactly.
A method of winning.
Cheating.
Okay. Okay, here we go. A prenatal person. I guess the answer is a fetus. That's what that is. A fetus from the slums of Constantinople excels at a hula hooping show, and when interrogated under suspicion of peeping through windows, revisits his past, consequently revealing how he cheated.
The Slumdog Millionaire.
This is Slumdog Millionaire.
Nice.
Really?
Yeah.
You got that out of that?
That's pretty impressive.
That's impressive.
A teenager from the slums of Mumbai excels in a TV game show, and when interrogated under suspicion of cheating, revisits his past, consequently revealing how he had all the answers.
I guess
Okay.
The Godfather was just too obvious, and your brain was working
Yeah.
in overdrive.
I think that's what it was. That must have been it.
Okay, let's do a third one. Here we go. Okay, give me a type of human association.
The Freemasons? Is that what
Okay.
you're asking?
Perfect. The Freemasons.
All right.
Give me a noble or royal title.
Sir.
Well, I think that's a mode of address.
Oh.
Archduke?
There we go.
Oh, you want Archduke.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What is that face? What is that? Look.
I was trying to think if that was the same as a marquee or not.
Oh,
But I'm an American, so I don't care.
I don't know. Yeah, right.
Give me a relationship, but not family.
A relationship, but not family.
Yeah.
Masseuse.
Okay.
Personal. Can we make it personal masseuse?
Yes, we'll make it personal.
Live in masseuse.
Live in masseuse.
Give me an educational institution.
Let's go with Dartmouth.
Nice. Okay. Give me something. Give me an asset.
An asset.
An asset.
Startling good looks.
Okay.
Quite an asset.
In Hollywood. It doesn't hurt in
I
Hollywood.
wouldn't know, but
Yeah, I hear tell.
hear it's
Yeah,
good.
I hear it's helpful.
Okay. Here we go. A fashionable Freemason archduke is dumped by her personal masseuse, and so decides to follow him to Dartmouth, where she figures out that there is more to her than just startling good looks.
yes, okay.
You got it?
Yeah, it's Legally Blonde.
Yeah.
It is Legally Blonde.
You guys are killing me.
Yeah, a fashionable sorority queen is dumped by her boyfriend and so decides to follow him to law school, where she figures out there is more to her than just good looks.
Startlingly good looks, actually.
Actually, it's pretty
close
much
to the.
pretty much exactly it. All right, should we do one more?
Should we do one more?
I want to try. Yeah,
Let's do one more. Okay.
The likelihood of me getting this is pretty low, but I like to contribute. I like to share the words.
You're too much in the business is your problem.
I
He's
wish-
like, these
I
are
wish that were the case.
These are terrible log lines. I would never produce this film.
Yeah, that one with the big concho guy, the Godfather.
Yeah. All right, here we
Overrated.
go.
Just joking. I love it. That's my favorite.
Okay. Give me a profession.
Taxidermist.
Man, spot on.
Nice.
Wouldn't it be great if we somehow got one of these right? Like it was the log line.
Exactly.
I go Silence of the Lambs.
The movie is about a taxidermist, Silence of the Lambs.
I guess that could even be.
That'd be the one.
Yeah.
Okay. So give me a kind of person.
Narcissist.
Nice.
Thank you.
Give me a mythological place.
What's that bridge called in that guy's always defending in Asgard?
It's Hemdall, and it's the something bridge. Bifrost.
Bifrost.
It is Bifrost. I was like, I remember in Persian mythology, it's Chinvat, but I can't think. Okay, Bifrost. Well done.
Of course, you were worried about getting your Persian and your.
Well, okay, I'm just showing off. Give me a noun.
Those are things, right?
Yes.
Gouda.
Gouda. That's excellent. Give me another noun.
What that?
What that? Fantastic. Give me a science fiction cliche.
That feels like Tony needs to take this one.
What? I can't think of any. There's so many good
There's
plot devices.
no science fiction writer ever uses cliches.
That's right. Warp drive.
Okay, there we go.
Very Star Trek. Very nice.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
A taxidermist is led by a narcissist to a forbidding Bifrost bridge where he discovers the shocking Gouda. The life he knows is the elaborate what that of an evil warp drive.
Is it? Ooh.
You might have to read that one again.
Yeah, read that one
Let's try it
again.
again.
We got to
Okay.
really analyze this thing.
Yep. A taxidermist is led by a narcissist to a forbidding Bifrost bridge where he discovers the shocking Gouda. The life he knows is the elaborate what that of an evil warp drive.
Is it Matrix?
It is the Matrix.
How do you do that?
He's looking at my glasses. The reflection.
That's got to be it. That's got to be it.
I will not stand for that. That accusation.
That's really
retract it.
impressive. That's a gift.
I wish it was useful in some way.
Well, it is right now.
Well, yeah.
You should become a science fiction editor. I think that's the sole way. A computer hacker is led by a stranger to a forbidding underworld where he discovers the shocking truth. The life he knows is the elaborate deception of an evil cyber intelligence.
Ooh.
So that's what the Matrix is.
That's what I thought it was about cookies. Awesome. Mike, we are so glad to have you back.
Thanks.
We had a great discussion last time. One of the questions that I wanted to get to, or the sort of areas of questions I wanted to get to is, man, this is all super interesting kind of insight into how the thing works. Especially, by the way, I'm going to throw up a suggestion. You tell me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
right?
Go for it.
You really started doing this kind of in the early 21st century. By this, I mean getting into production.
Yeah.
It feels like that means you're sort of part of the decentralization away from Hollywood, right? Like, because I remember when M. Night Shyamalan, he was sort of like, this is amazing. He's not in Hollywood. He's in Philadelphia, right? And so you're an M. Night Shyamalan of Utah. And so you're kind of part of this, I mean, not like Exodus, but like, the remoting of film work outside of Hollywood. Is that fair?
I think it's a good way to put it. And I think I'm part of the, just the independent film movement, that has happened over the past, well, since the 90s or even a little bit earlier. The Sundance, kind of group of people. I think the difference between what I've been doing and maybe a more traditional, independent movie maker is that I am going after, films that are, high concept and are, can be science fiction, can be fantasy. We're just in a point in our, I think in the industry now where you do have the remote abilities. I mean, I've got a 5 gig connection. I can, if there's concept art or 3D animations or film footage, we can get that online. With Starlink, again, my partner's in the jungles, and he's got a little Starlink connection that he uses. And so this decentralization is a big thing. It used to be that if it wasn't in Hollywood, shot in Hollywood, then it goes north, right? It would go to Canada. Now it's going everywhere, and I think part of that is it's the technology. So cinema cameras used to be so expensive, and production teams used to be so big, but there's just new techniques in filmmaking. Whether it's guerrilla filmmaking or more planned run and gun filmmaking, it's just they've come up with different ways. I think the film The Creator that came out, what was it, last year, is a great example of kind of this new approach, and basically a very small production crew, a very low-end cinema camera that in many cases was about this size versus the bigger ones. And having this mobility and this ability to move around and go places quickly reduces the production costs, and you can do more. And so with all these changes, technological changes, the ability to communicate with people around the world, and then to also have people that have been in the industry, and you kind of cycle in the in the industry in Los Angeles, percolate for a couple years, and then many want to go back home. And so you have a lot of these people that are out there. And the big barrier was always, do we have the bandwidth to get these people together? And we do have the bandwidth now to do a lot of this and to keep costs down.
I wonder, so I was reading about John Ford, and one of the reasons he liked to go out to Monument Valley was because the studios would leave him alone. And you kind of have heard that. And in a way, that's why Hollywood is, besides the light, I guess, right out there in LA is beautiful. But they were getting away from the New York investors. We want to go out here so that they can't be peeking over our shoulder and we can do it. So do you think with this decentralization, it is going to allow for, or maybe is it allowing for, do you see that in the future or no? You don't have the Hollywood studios looking over your shoulder, trying to control what you're doing. You're decentralized geographically, but maybe in the types of films or the ideologies being decentralized as well, then, or not.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, from many different levels. I think, first of all, it used to be that money for films would usually come through big film funds, or it would be billion-dollar funds, and so of course you're going to have studio executives watching over your shoulder and everything. But with a lot of these independent films, there are different types of investors. I mean, certainly you've got social media and a lot of these new platforms that you actually can help find investors. Now, the reality is if you go out and do a film on your own, you've got a heavy responsibility in terms of fundraising. You've got to do it right. In other words, you've got to have people that can fundraise that are that have the credentials to do that. And, you have to write up PPMs and some of these different things to raise those funds. But if you can get through all of those things... PPM
being a private placement memorandum. A little pitch book, hey, please invest in the film.
Absolutely. And only qualified investors can do that.
Which means you got to be rich.
Yeah. So you're still going after rich people, but they might not be as rich.
Yeah,
as,
might not be billionaires.
Right.
Could be a
And
guy
they
that
might not
owns
be hedge funds or some of these other
Right.
things that a lot of the studios have used in the past. But the timing is perfect independently, just because with an independent film, you have the ability to take it to the festivals, and there, then the studios will either take it, they'll buy it or they won't buy it. You've got online abilities now where, you could do a portion of a film online as a teaser and then get people to watch it. You could even stream your own film online. You don't have to have the distribution networks like you used to. You can create your distribution networks. And so from fundraising to distribution, to the marketing side of distribution, all this can be done, on your side. You don't have to have an organization as big as the main studios. And the challenge right now, the studios are struggling with what's going on with the environment because the decentralization is hitting them very strong. And so all of a sudden it puts us, the smaller filmmakers in positions where they can get, these opportunities. The other thing is the streamers, right? And so with the streamers, if you have a good high concept product, those streamers will pick it up. You got to be careful with the deals because, some of the deals are tough. And in the past, a lot of streaming is basically you make the film and whatever money you get from your production budget that you've made is what you're going to get, and you'll get a little bit of payment for the film, and then that's it. Now things have changed, as the writers and actors and producers have gone on strikes. They've pushed for more rights, so that that doesn't just happen. But this distribution model is changing, and there are studios that fundraise strictly off crowd-based funding, and what was the film Sound of Freedom?
Oh yeah,
that was pretty much a crowd-based funded film, and so it's just having these new ways of fundraising that opens up the opportunity. I don't know if did I meander a little too much or
I'm just thinking. I was thinking. No, that was great. I also was thinking in Texas Monthly. I'm in Texas,
right,
deep in the heart of Texas. They were talking about, forever Texas was going to be the new Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
It's still, it's like tomorrow it will be.
Right.
Free beer tomorrow. That's the sign, right? But that there have been, we talked about on the last episode, The Chosen, who you've worked with the director of that, and some other things. Some of the like Bent Key, Daily Wire stuff is being, for their streaming service, not the podcast politics side, the art, artier side of it, or more, what's the term? Commercial.
sure.
Whatever. Anyway, and so this idea, because of Texas politics versus California politics, that perhaps there, and this is kind of what I was getting at with like ideology, and we don't have to like get in the weeds of that, but you are seeing like maybe different voices and different viewpoints because of that. Maybe clumping around Texas, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. One of the challenges that I've seen with Hollywood is it becomes very, Hollywood's very, we'll say very diverse. So, but what I'm about to say is they're also very homogenous, and it's an internal system, and it's a buddy system, and sometimes, things just go around in those inner circles, and so you get a lot of the same, and what we're finding is that as you go outside of that Hollywood system, you're getting more fresh ideas, you're getting more perspectives, you're getting things that resonate with more mainstream audiences. You can take more risks. Hollywood's very risk averse right at this point. I mean, that's why they do sequels of sequels of sequels, or they
Remakes of remakes.
Remakes of remakes, or remakes of animations that become live versions, live action versions. They're very risk averse. But the independent
And it
film,
makes sense, right?
Right.
I think if you're going to put $500 million at risk because it's a giant, then the Spider-Man movie never really bombs.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, but it's just right now is a tipping point, and there's been some great articles written on writers in general, and what does this whole change mean to the writers themselves, and it is it's a scary time.
Well, what do you think it means to the writers themselves?
Well, I think that that if you get a writer that's able to go out and do something independent, they're going to have a lot more say creatively. If they're teaming up with a smaller production group.
Mm-hmm. That's because the distinction used to be that this is what people told me is you're a TV writer, then you're in charge of the production. If you're a movie writer, you just give up everything.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember the movie The Majestic with Jim Carrey, and was it the McCarthy era when everyone's getting blacklisted, and of course he's getting blacklisted and everything, and then ends up getting amnesia and everything. But the point is that it was again he was stuck in this system. And not necessarily the McCarthy side of things, but he's a writer and he worked for the big studio. He's a hired gun, and he's disposable. When you start to go out and do independent work, then all of a sudden, like I said, you get more of a voice. Now it depends on who you work with, right? Mm-hmm. And it depends on what contract you write. Or what you're willing with. If you're a bigger named author, you're going to have a lot more ability to kind of throw your weight around.
Yeah.
But it is
if you're good personally, you can hook up with someone who respects you no matter what.
Absolutely.
If you're careful to read the room of who it is that you might work with, and just work with, like you said before, people that are genuine and
right.
Hi, I'm DJ Butler, senior editor of ARC Press. How would you like to win $10,000? I want to talk to you briefly about the ARC Prize. The ARC Prize is a novel writing contest in 2025. The first thing you need to know is that the theme of the contest is America 2076. That is, of course, the 300th birthday of America, measuring from the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Our plan is to publish the winner on July 4th, 2026, which is to say on the 250th birthday. So your winning novel on America's 250th birthday will be published talking about America at 300. Now, does that date 2076 mean that you have to write some kind of near-term science fiction novel? Absolutely not. You can interpret the theme America 2076 any way you want. Formally, we're launching the prize on March 8, 2025, which is, as we all know, all we writers and editors know, National Proofreading Day. And don't we appreciate those people? And the contest will run for 7 months, 7 full NaNoWriMos to end on National Taco Day, which, as we all know, is October 7th, 2025. Now, let me tease you a little bit more. I said up front you could win $10,000. Actually, the prize is a publishing contract with ARC Press with a $10,000 advance. So if the book does well, you might make more than $10,000 over time. There's more information and will be more information on our website. Information about the contest, information about how to write a proposal, the widget for submitting these materials on our website, which is www.arc.press. That's all from me. I look forward to hearing from you, and good luck.
So this is something. This is like a hobby horse of mine. So I'm going to talk to you about it. We keep saying films, and I know we are all movie buffs. I think, is that fair to say? You're the one guy that liked Gentlemen Broncos.
I know. I'm appalled at you all.
Yeah, and but we have seen this sort of like the prestige series, and I think some people have kind of taken that to mean that 2-hour movies are over. What's your take on this idea?
Wow.
I hope they're not, because I
mean, if we look at it just in terms of post-COVID and theatrical attendance, it is a really tough time for small films to be in theaters. I'm seeing more and more of it right now. And it's nice. And a lot of times local filmmakers will be able to get their films into local theaters. But tentpole films, or these big high octane action films, superhero films, or whatever, they're the ones that get all the slots. And the way the game's played is it's just very simple. It's not the studios that determine, how long your film is in the theater. It's the theaters. And so the theaters make those decisions. And because the theaters are under a lot of pressure to get people in, they're risk averse themselves. And so these smaller films struggle, to really get in and have a good run. There's a lot of good movies that have come out and they've fallen between the cracks because the theaters won't take the risk anymore. And so it's hard to make My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which is a slow it's a slow burn that eventually, crescendos. You just don't see a lot of those anymore because they're not given the time to do the build up.
So do you think that like straight to streaming is more the realm of TV series, not straight to streaming movies?
Well, I think it's both.
It can be both.
It's both. It's both. I mean, with the streamers, they're doing both.
Yeah, they're doing both. But what do you think the future is? I'm asking you to look into your crystal arc mug that we gave you and see and look at the future.
Boy, that's a tough responsibility.
Well, this one would be black.
That's why. Look into this.
You're in the wrong mug.
Future is bleak. Yeah.
I think that people will always go to theaters for the experience and the spectacle. I think what might happen is we might see more of the smaller theater chains doing more of the smaller films. What I will say, it's been proven that if you have a film and it goes through the box office, goes through all the marketing and everything, and then goes to streaming soon, it's going to make a lot more money on the streaming side because it's been marketed
Then
really
if you go
well.
straight to streaming.
If you go straight to streaming.
Yeah.
And
It seems like I'm seeing more of this though lately. That after the Wuhan incident, there was there was a time when only giant big box superhero, whatever the heck, things that I would never go see ever, were in the theaters, and then slowly, like really cool little projects started seeping in, whether it be a G-rated piece like or something that was just like over the top R, and they started coming in at the edges. Something like last year's Strange Darling, which I thought was just brilliant, and the Greatest Christmas Pageant ever are two examples of this. Would you say maybe of things that are not vast budgets, huge stars, but that are just solid films that benefited from a theater run first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think also just to keep in mind about the value of small films is when you make a big film, you have a big budget. Along with that big budget, you have an equally big advertising budget. And so at the box office, for you to kind of at least break even, you gotta have a pretty high theatrical gross. And that's a lot of pressure. With a small film, if it's well written and if there's a fan base, again, how we talked about writers in our last podcast, writers who promote themselves, market themselves, use social media, you have a fan base. And so like with Best Christmas Pageant Ever, there was a fan base.
Yeah.
And
going back decades.
And then there was also it's a very specific niche in terms of the audience, but it's a niche that actually is very marketable. And so this little small film was able to recoup very quickly the cost of the production budget and the print and advertising. And so then, of course, what does that mean? Well, when it goes further into streaming, there's going to be more money that's going to be, given to the various key players above the line. And above the line usually is referring to, producers and studio and of course the writers. So
Yeah, somewhere in there.
yeah,
Somewhere in there.
somewhere in there is the writers.
I will say this though, and I'm not trying to push you to say the territory you don't want to go into. You say it's a niche, and I see what you mean, but a good chunk of this country is in that niche, meaning our Christian, because that film. But to me, the difference, because we saw, I just told you kind of, earlier before we started recording, my kids loved it. My wife, I'd never read the book growing up. I missed it, but my wife had read the book. And, it doesn't come across as, it comes across as a movie that has sort of expressly Christian themes, and I mean literally, you see the nativity, sort of at the end, and
it is about the Herdmans kind of finding out the true meaning of Christmas, and an actual Jesus is in it.
But it doesn't feel like
But it's not preachy.
It's not preachy.
It's almost the opposite, right? Because of the nature of the story.
Well, the Christians are the bad guys. And I don't mean it that way.
No.
But it's imperfect people who are very, they're judgmental of these kids.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't become preachy. Just the way that
and I guess what I'm saying is I get what you're saying, a niche audience, but it feels like this is a pretty big niche, and I'm
sure,
and I'm going to segue into plugging ARC, but is filling a need and a void that it felt like it's just been sitting there, and that's kind of what we're trying to do: buy our books when they come out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it sounds like that. What you're trying to say is that it's good. And it feels because there's been so many
bad
religious films that are just terrible.
Yeah,
sure. They can only be in house because of how preachy they are, or kind of bound by their
condescending.
And we've gotten to a point where people that actually are good writers and actual real producers, want to take on these projects and
that they can happen because of the way
really
we're talking
good
about the
instead
industry.
of like crap. They're like Sound of Freedom or this that are they have perhaps messages, but that's not what it's really about. It's about telling the story and identifying with the characters and creating this amazing milieu that the writers discovered and all those things that you do when you're trying to make a great piece of art. You can do that within a different culture than just whatever Hollywood happens to believe at any given moment.
Yeah, that's
perhaps,
a good point. I mean, that's the power of independent filmmaking. Again, is being able to maintain your voice and kind of be true to what the vision is. And I think you absolutely have a better chance of doing that independently. But like I said, it's hard to raise money for films. It's hard to get a film distributed. We were talking, before we went on air here, about how intricate getting a film out is in terms of the pieces, and if it's like Jenga. You're stacking up the Jenga pile and you're getting it really high, and it's like you have to first of all get your story written. Then secondly, you've got to get a studio to buy into it. Once the studio's bought into it, are they going to do the domestic distribution? If they're not, who is? And then once you've got the domestic distribution in place, then you've got to have international distribution. And not all studios do both domestic and international distribution. Then finally, in addition to that, then you have various marketing groups or different groups that are involved in the process. And then you have the bonding company, and it's just like they're the watchdogs. They're going to make sure this movie gets completed. And if it's not on track, then they're going to make sure that they replace it. So the crazy thing is if you just pull one of those pieces out, it's just like playing a Jenga game where you've gotten the stack up so high that one piece just makes the whole thing crumble down. And then all of a sudden you have to start all over again and do that. Like we had everything for one film that was, we had the funding, the distributor, domestic distributor, the bonding company. but we struggled to get the international distributor, which we thought was going to be the easiest part because it had been in the past. And so we struggled on that for a year or two. And then suddenly our type of film seemed to be the hot commodity, and international distributors were like, absolutely. And it's like, oh, sheesh. So, there's a real big part of business that's involved in this process. And people always say, well, why does it take so long? And internally or externally, and that is because there's just so many moving pieces.
So they're actually, when somebody says it's in development, it's actually being developed. It's not just sitting there.
Well, unless it gets stuck in development hell. And a lot of times what'll happen is the film studios will have, just imagine a board, and you've got all the years and everything, and then they've got that maybe it's little magnets of each film, and they're putting them in the months of release, and they're moving it around and everything. And so that's constantly going. And then they're looking at your film, and they'll go, well, yeah, let's make this a 2030 release. And then what happens is right before you start production, they have a bomb. And then all of a sudden they go to the board and they start moving all over the place and changing everything else. And all of a sudden yours is pulled off and put down in the hold section, basically, where it's just going to sit there and wait until the time is right. And as long as the studio has the option, then they're going to hold on to it. And so there's just a lot to it. Now, there are films that get fast-tracked very quickly. And there are films that are fast-tracked independently very quickly. But I can tell you the biggest producers in the world have spent 20 years, 30 years on certain films that they wanted to get released. And
how do you deal with that psychologically, since that is your position?
Well, long walks.
How do you keep believing? I mean, you have to keep believing in this thing.
You do, and it's the same thing as a writer. Yeah. I mean, it really comes to the core of anyone that has a dream, and that is that you just commit to it, and experience teaches you very quickly that your journey is not going to be fast in many cases. Few people are very lucky to just suddenly get a one-off bestseller book. Few people are lucky to even get a big blockbuster film on their first try. And so part of it is you've got to love what you're doing. You've got to just be a dreamer. I think that's one of the big parts of it. And like I've always said, you always need to have a plan B to keep yourself going also. I think that's very important. Now, if you're able to be a full-time writer, or you're able to be in a studio environment, which usually forces you into the big film locations, that's great. But in many cases, that's not the case. And so you've always got to have that plan B. And yeah, the long burn's a tough one. And there's times where we've had to take kind of a time out for a few years and then come back to something. So we'll put it on the shelf, we'll work on something else, or we might even just take a break, for a while, and then we come right back. And I would just, writers do the same thing.
Yeah, I think the past podcast, I said something similar to this, like writers can be too precious about their book or their series or their world. And a lesson I think we should take from Hollywood and screenwriters is being willing to adapt and try different things. And, my favorite line from Ed Wood was the Tim Burton film, worst film you ever saw, huh? Well, my next one will be better. And having a next one and being willing to pivot to the next one.
Absolutely. I was speaking with a film professor a couple months ago, and he has a daughter that's I think she's a screenwriter, and she's finally got her script, and I think it's actually going into production. But he made a really interesting comment. He said, I don't care how bad the movie is. I don't care, whether it's low budget or high budget. None of that matters. The fact that movie got edited and it got put onto a DVD or Blu-ray or streamed or even sent to your friends and family, that is a huge accomplishment. And if you look back on your life and you look and you realize that you haven't made that bestseller, you haven't made that big movie, and you just judge it based on that, then you're going to feel like a failure. But I kind of look at it. My dad's a rancher, and he's always had big dreams, of expansion of the ranch and everything.
You grew up in like the Grand Tetons.
Grand Teton, yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah,
What a
beautiful
childhood.
country.
Wow.
Yeah. We never had TV, and we read a lot of books, and so it was a mixture of sci-fi and westerns.
Wow.
But the point is that if you're doing it, success should not be measured necessarily on being the greatest known writer or the greatest filmmaker. If you really look at it, like I was saying with my dad's ranch, he wanted to expand, but in the end of his life, he looked back and he said, wow, look what I've accomplished. I have done this. I had a ranch and I kept it going through all the crazy years. And
I've always said that the mark of a professional writer is they actually finish the story. They finish their books, and that's really the greatest accomplishment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I try to tell people that when they pitch or submit, look, whatever the outcome is, you wrote a book.
That's right.
And you were brave enough to go talk to strangers and say, hey, listen, I think my book is worthy of being published. And that's a creative accomplishment. It's an accomplishment in terms of you did work, and like it's an accomplishment
Some
in terms
people
of
have to be
personal
content
courage.
with that the rest of their life.
That may be it. That may be, in some cases, that's your victory.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the point is that you should
It is a victory.
It is a victory, and it's a legacy, because you hope that when you die, that story will be with some of your belongings, and it's passed on to the grandchildren and great grandchildren. They might say it's the worst book in the world or whatever, but it's part of that legacy.
Especially if you're a bad
Grandpa
grandfather.
was a terrible writer.
Grandpa Dave was an idiot. He deserved the utter lack of fame.
Or they go, wow, now I really know who this person was by his writing.
Yeah. Now I know why
He was a big old weirdo. I just thought he was kind of nice. He gave us penny candy. He gave us whorehound candies.
And I no longer like him.
Yeah.
We should probably wind up in a few minutes here, but I want to just ask a. This is a question I wanted to get to last time. I suspect some of the folks that'll be watching us, especially at first here, are going to be writers. I think that's who is already
Absolutely.
paying attention to us.
Yeah.
Which is great. Welcome.
Write something.
Yes.
Stop watching.
Why are you watching?
Stop watching this and write something. Go write a book.
Wasting your time.
Yeah. Don't look at us.
But assuming you aren't doing that, then here's my question: like, if I'm sitting down to write a novel and taking everything, watching Mike Gee, and I'm like, this is interesting stuff about how movies get made and production. Like, what can I, as the writer, do? So we've talked about social media. So me and my sort of career, one thing I could do was like be out there, active, have a following. But like as I'm writing the book, like if I want to maximize the chances that I'm going to be attractive to a producer, like does that affect the kind of book I write? Like how should I do things to make my book movie, attractive?
Okay, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it's good because, coming from acquisitions, working in acquisitions for books, and then of course, doing acquisitions on film, I do think that there are some things that you can do. I mean, the reality is Hollywood's looking for good stories.
Yeah.
And streamers are looking for good stories. And that's really the bottom line. But it's a business, and certain things are more marketable than others. And let's say you're doing a science fiction book. I would say that when you go into doing this, first thing I would do is say, okay, what is already out there in Hollywood in terms of science fiction shows, films? What is trending? Those are things that I would be looking at. I'd be looking and reading articles on what's going to be future trending. That's the business side of it. Now, on the story side of it, what I would be looking at is if you're going to tell a big story, then it's going to be a bigger risk and it's going to be a harder push to get into Hollywood.
You're talking about big in terms of like hey, in this movie there are space fleets of millions
That's
of
right.
ships.
Massive
fighting each
world
other.
building, big set
Right.
pieces, all these different things. That just makes it harder to sell to Hollywood.
More expensive.
More expensive. In some shows, or like the Hallmark model is that you have limited locations, limited numbers of actors, and you write your story around those actors and those locations. And so, let's say that we were doing, a period piece or something like that. Then I'm going to find a very, very specific, limited locations that I would be writing about, and because it's going to cost money in terms of building the sets and everything. And so when I'm writing that, then I'm going to keep that in mind.
Oh, and so you do kind of do some of the location scouting for them.
Parallel.
And deliberately
Yeah.
set this in locations.
Yeah, a lot of the
interesting.
writers do that anyways. I mean,
Yeah.
I worked with a former Harlequin writer that she shifted over into the Regency and Western, and she would go out and do her research, and she would go out on these adventures, week-long adventures, to scout out the locations, and she literally could be a filmmaker because she
Well, it
would
sounds like she was thinking about it as in storytelling conception,
Absolutely.
as a movie, rather than that seems like what I would do. I wouldn't be like trying to please any particular. But if it was, I would think about it as I'm creating it, in terms of it being a movie, so that it has an organic sort of fit to what a film would be, and rather than trying to make it into that from.
Yeah.
So start it from that would be my.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a tough question to answer because do you water down your story
Yeah.
when a book is so much bigger and gives you the ability to have a bigger, scope?
Yeah.
Or do you water it down so that it just matches,
Yeah. Exactly.
And then I would just ask the question, why not just write a script and write it to that?
Yeah.
But there's pros, again, like I've said, to having a book and then having a movie.
Yeah, but you could choose to do at the margin things. I mean, let me see if this resonates. You could choose at the margin things like, hey, I'm going to make sure that my conflicts are sufficiently external and colorful that they make good action scenes.
Right.
As opposed to lots of internal, the characters sitting and thinking, that may be great novel. It's hard to film.
It's kind of
Yeah,
what
I remember-
novels are good at.
I think
Yeah.
no, it
Yeah.
is, but I think
Like-
I want to close with this question. Not. But I want to. We don't have to close now, but I have a question
Well,
I want
we
to
need to
close
wind
with.
up here.
But I want to. Well, okay, I'll segue into it.
Here we
then.
go.
Okay, so I love Stephen King. He was the kind of the first. Some of the later stuff, but the early stuff, and I love the movie Secret Window, which is a Stephen King novella, but like out of proportion to how good that movie is. Like I fully acknowledge that movie's not that good. Why do you like that so much? But I remember David Koepp, the screenwriter and director of it. This goes to your external stuff. Is that movie's like a lot of Stephen King stuff is really about like writing and thing. But he said if you watch the movie, there's like 20 seconds of him sitting. He's a writer. It's about stories. There's like 20 seconds of him writing. He said because writing is really boring in movies.
watch.
And so,
Boring to watch.
it works on the page because you can be internal, but like a dude.
I don't know that it works on the page.
No,
I don't want any novels about writing.
Do not say this novel.
Do not say this novels, but no, right. But I'm saying it is an example of something that is very internal. That is like this is boring as hell to like watch someone do it. And I want to segue then.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody's got like a weird cult movie. Secret Window is not that they love, that they like tell all their friends, dude, you got to watch it. I can name
Gentlemen
a couple
Broncos.
for Tony Daniel if he can't think of his. So I would let's close with that. What is the movie, that cult film? You don't have to be cult. It could be a big box office flop.
Or an old film.
Or an old film. Don't say Star Wars is what I'm getting at. That you like tell people to watch.
But Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah,
that's eligible.
That would be fine. And we're going to start with Dave Butler.
Well, I already said Gentlemen Broncos.
Okay, Gentlemen Broncos.
But I will say Battle Beyond the Stars.
Okay.
That'll be on the stars.
Tony.
God. I could say a lot of things. I have
Let's say one.
so many. Can I say two? All
Say
right.
two.
One
No,
of
say
'em-
two. Say two. He said two.
I said two.
One of them's Fandango, that great Kamron movie from about Texas, and it's just amazing that thing got made. And the only movie I really like Kevin Costner in, and also Jim Jarmusch's movie Dead Man is just absolutely one of my favorites, and it just sank like a stone. But it's the last good movie he made, in my opinion. So.
Yours is also true stories.
I also love the David Byrne / Talking Heads film True Stories.
That is good.
Yeah.
That is good.
I'll go next, and then I want you to close out since you're our guest.
Okay.
So, one is I'll give you my wife's, which is the Australian film The Castle. Have you seen this?
Mm-hmm.
It is hilarious. It is.
I have an Australian. No.
Anyway,
Yes.
So check that out.
Isn't it about like a domestic dispute or something?
So he lives right near the airport, and they want to eminent domain his house. And a man's home is his castle. There's my bad Australian accent. And so he's like fighting, but it is hilarious. It's so weird. And then mine is a really obscure thing called The Woman Chaser, which was a Charles Willeford novel, and it is Patrick Warburton, who was Putty in Seinfeld. Is the main character. It's a period piece. It's shot in black and white, and it is just so
I've
strange.
seen that. That guy is
Have you
such a
seen
good
that?
actor.
It is so good,
just
and it's like the best thing he
inhabits whatever
did.
he does.
And it's so bizarre. Anyway, but I always tell people they need to watch it. I think it is on like Netflix now, or one of those. You can actually. For the longest time, it was only released as a VHS at Hollywood Video. And so my buddy burned me a copy of it. So you can bootleg, but now you can get it easier. So, all right, and let's close with you.
Okay. Well, I think the first one I would do that no one will probably ever get to see is Orson Welles' Don Quixote. I don't think the film was ever released, and I was working with a film archivist that was restoring the film, and we got to see the film. Well, actually, it was in a they released the film as a kind of a special film event, and it was to a really conservative audience. And what they didn't realize is that the film started out in English, but then got translated to Spanish, and then it was redubbed over to English. And so as we're watching the film, you're deep in the story, and suddenly, all of a sudden, Don Quixote starts throwing off some F-bombs and everything, and it's the translation of the language, and they didn't realize that. And so I actually had a lot of phone calls from these people going, what is going on with it? They were kind of shocked by it, and I just said, no, this is what happens when things get dubbed back and forth. All I can say is Don Quixote, if I can say that right, is just think of Blazing Saddles. Where in Blazing Saddles they jump from modern day period into the Western and then back. They do that with Don Quixote, with Orson Welles, and it's crazy. The other one is The Gods Must Be Crazy.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean,
What a great film.
my kids have never seen that, and it's the only time I'm really excited about promoting Coca-Cola.
Every time I see
because
a
that
Coke bottle, man.
That's right.
The Jeep named the Antichrist.
Exactly.
That's one of the great fake documentaries.
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Did it not start as a real documentary?
Probably.
I think I could be wrong.
We
My
could do a whole
memory is
segment on great fake documentaries.
it started to, but then they couldn't make a
It's Forgotten Silver and many. Yeah.
We'll have to do that. All right then. Thank you for joining us. I'm DJ Butler, here with the entire ARC Press editorial team and our great friend Mike Gee in the Go for Wood Lounge. Remember, the humans win in the end.